Hello viewers, welcome to a very special video here from the Nurburgring Nordschleife. Now this is a Friday practice session, and normally these aren't too interesting, not too much goes on, but this session in particular was actually rather fun and very interesting. Now, as ever, on a Friday practice, you are allowed to run a GoPro on your helmet, which is exactly what I'm doing here to get this first-person perspective. And hopefully this gives you quite a good insight into what it's like to be in one of these sessions. Now, of course, before we go out on track, the Black Falcon team here strapping me into the car to make sure I'm nice and comfortable. Let's start her up and get out on track.
So this is an NLS practice session for NLS 6. Tomorrow is the 6 hour, and then on Sunday we have another 6 hour. Going out here at the end of the day, quite a lot of cars on track. Just had a red flag. Alright, let's go.
As we head out onto the circuit, allow me to give you some context as to what I'm driving and where I'm driving. So the car is the BMW 330i G20. It's prepared by Black Falcon and sponsored by Bilstein. I'm driving the car alongside Jimmy Broadbent and Misha Sharudin. Of course, those of you who have watched the previous videos will already know all of this information, but I think it's good to provide some context for those that are new. As for the circuit, well, this is actually quite an interesting moment here, because as we go straight on here, I'm turning left at turn 5 here on the Nurburgring Grand Prix loop, and this is actually the very first time I've actually driven this part of the track. So we are driving the Nurburgring Nordschleife plus GP combined, and this is actually the longest possible configuration that you can do at the Nurburgring, and this is actually very rare. They never run this circuit. It's almost always some other variation where you cut through half the GP, or you cut through the Mercedes-Benz arena at the beginning of the lap, and therefore this was a very rare occasion. Coming up through the Schumacher S for the very first time, and what an honour it is to be able to do that after lapping this track so many times in a sim and coming here for real in the BMW. So the car in front of me is a fellow Black Falcon car, and it's a detuned Porsche Cayman, and given my relative inexperience around here in real life racing, I wasn't sure about what that car was capable of, and so I let it go at the beginning of the lap, and therefore it was my objective to try to, let's say, keep up. I thought it was going to be a lot quicker, but for this practice session it turned out that we were actually quite evenly matched, and that's what I really liked about this session. So you can see there's lots of other cars darting about all over the place. There was actually a car stopped on the right hand side there. Some cars entering the pit lane. There's actually 2 pit lane entries given the length of the track here. So you might have noticed as well that there were lots of GT3 cars flying past, and that is something we're really trying to practice here. So not only do I have to try to drive the car as quickly as possible, of course, I'm also learning how to and when to look in the rearview mirror and the side mirrors in order to check for oncoming faster cars and move out of their way. So cars like the GT3 cars, we've had an Aston Martin and a BMW GT3 car already go past on the GP section, and therefore you might have seen just how quick they are. And on a Friday practice session, this is a really good opportunity just to acclimatise myself to the weekend, witness the types of cars that we're going to be coming up against, and just practice what it's like to be getting out of the way for these faster cars, because trust me, it's actually harder than it might seem. They are so fast, they come up at you so fast, you might be able to just see that in the rearview mirror there, and as some of the cars come up to me, and of course the left mirror you might be able to spot as they quite quickly approach. Often they do give you a flash in with the lights, and so it gives you a very good indication that they are approaching, and so it's up to you to then move. So coming up to Arenberg here, fast sweeping right-hander as we go down the descent towards the foxhole. Very fast and fearsome section this. You really do gather some good speed, well over 200 kph. By the time you're going to hit the compression here at the bottom. The Cayman beginning just to pull away on that section of the track. And then you come up towards the Adenauer Force section. This is a nice little technical area. I do like this sequence of corners. Keeping it to the left there to give myself a nice run on the exit here. So another car approaching. You can see I'm just using my indicators just to give the car behind a clear indication as to where I'm going, and that I've definitely seen them. You can see just how quick that car is. That's another Black Falcon car, the Mercedes GT4 car, flying by. And this was a key component of racing around the Nurburgring Nordschleife. The differences in classes, there are many classes indeed, and it's up to you to understand who's in what class and who you should let by and who you should probably fight against and when you should fight against them. There is definitely a lot to think about around a track like this, and a race series such as the NLS, the Nürburgring Langstrecke series, to give it its full name. I think it just translates to the Nürburgring Endurance series pretty much. Now, coming out of one of the slowest corners on the track towards Brightside, this is quite a tricky corner because you're braking downhill. Release the brake, carry the speed through, and then this uphill right-hander. This is quite crucial to lap time. I mean, there's so many crucial corners, but given that it's uphill, you really do have to be on the power quite early. Keeping it in fourth gear there. And then we're going to go through the left of Niki Lauda curve. Some traffic up ahead, if we're not including the Porsche. And then into Bergwerk here. Another very crucial corner because this leads out onto this very long ascent towards the carousel. And you're going to therefore be flat out for a good 30 seconds, I would say here. Indicating over to the right-hand side to let the Porsche Cup car go. And just really considering how early I should move out of the way and when I should move out of the way. I think this is a really important detail when you're in one of the lower classes at the Nürburgring, which is how do you effectively let by the fast cars without losing too much time yourself. You are obliged to move, but of course you don't really want to slow yourself down a huge amount. So this was a question I've always been asking myself, and over the 50 or 60 laps I've done to this point in time around this track, I haven't done too many laps with really fast traffic, and therefore it's something I'm still very much learning. Something I also haven't done too much of is racing behind another car like I am right now. Of course I'm not right up behind this Porsche, but pretty much all of the laps I've done to this point have been largely on my own. And so this was something I was really thinking about during this session, the idea that during the race, which was coming up in the following days after this, I really had to be aware that of course I was going to be in a race. I was going to have cars in front of me, right behind me, therefore my concentration would be different, my visibility would be different. If you have a car right in front of you, you can't quite see as much as you would if you're on your own. And so this was all really good practice for so many different reasons, many more reasons than you might just initially think. The Porsche just runs through some dust there. It looked like there was some oil down on the track earlier and they just cover it up with that dust. So this is a very fast section of the circuit, one of the best parts of the track. And I think this has been a good little test so far, keeping up with the Cayman. As I kind of touched upon earlier, I'm not exactly sure how fast that car is meant to be, whether or not I should be quicker than it or if I shouldn't. But nonetheless, it was a good little battle that we were having as we come through YouTube Corner, as it is effectively known, Brunchen to give it, or Brunchen 2 to give it its proper name. Ice curve here, the left-hander running the curve on the exit to straighten up that exit. We're going to come up to a yellow flag section here So we're going to come up to some traffic. Thinking about going for the move, but it's not possible. There are some yellow flags you might be able to just see there. Double wave yellows. We're going to skip forward to the end of that yellow flag section as we get back to green. And those slow sections, you might think they're just a time to rest, but actually it's a time to talk to the team over the radio, but also to obviously you have to concentrate with your speed, and perhaps just look in the rear view mirror, just assess the situation around you and make sure that if there is a quick car behind you, you let them go pretty quickly once it does come back to green. So onto the Dottinger Her for the first time in this practice session. This is where you can really flex the muscles of the car, and boom, the Falcon Porsche going flying past, and it really is an amazing difference. The GT3 cars are just on another planet in terms of speed, and you don't really stand a chance of competing with them at all. And if anything, if I were to compete with them on the straight, is probably where I have the best shot. On the brakes and through the corners, they are just in another league compared to a car like this. As good as this car is and as fun as it is to drive. So that is one full lap of the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit plus the Nordschleife, the longest possible configuration that you can do. And Tom in the Porsche there is just going to slow down on the main straight here as we cross the line and let me go into the lead of this little battle. Braking on the 150 board here into the first hairpin, very big braking zone, and just dropping down the apex. It's quite a steep little apex there actually as you drop down through turn 2. This is the Mercedes-Benz arena, and normally during the Nürburgring 24 they don't use this section. They use the cut through instead. So letting through another Black Falcon car there. So just seeing it nice and early. The Grand Prix circuit is so much wider than the Nordschleife section, and so dealing with traffic is a lot easier here. So there's the cut through to the right there, which is the sprint circuit, and often the track they use in the NLS races. So this was actually a real treat to be able to go down to this part of the track. It's a very rare occasion, you don't normally go down here. For the Nürburgring 24 they do, but I'm yet to do a Nürburgring 24. So heading down towards the hairpin at the bottom of the hill, the furthest extent of the Grand Prix loop, and back on the power. Coming up towards the Michael Schumacher-esque, this corner, this chicane, very fun to do. Opening up the entry, back on the power, carrying as much speed over the curb and a little bit wide there. I think I was looking in the mirror at the time. So just pushing that right to the edge of the track limits. Perhaps should be concentrating a bit more than that. Carrying the speed nicely. As I say, this part of the track is incredibly wide, owing to being a Grand Prix track, and therefore you can really carry a lot of speed through the corners. Coming up behind a Hyundai now, and we only have 2 opportunities left on the lap before the Nordschleife to really get this move done. Race quite early, so we're going to send it up the inside. And let's not forget, this is only a practice session, so people aren't going too crazy and they're not racing too hard. Car's pulling over to the right hand side there. That guy just letting me go before the Nordschleife, which we are now on. I went a bit wide on that left-hander into Sabine Schmidt's curve, the first proper corner of the Nordschleife, and then we have 2 very quick cars in our rearview mirror here. Falcon Porsche coming up. So one went by. I think they were running 2 this weekend, and he quite slowly went past there. I did give the space, and then another Porsche wanted to get by. I left the space, wasn't quite sure where I was going, and he went through eventually. So that could have been a bit quicker, a bit more graceful, letting by those 2 cars, but I think in race spec they will really be pushing a lot quicker, and they won't be slowing down so much. Because it is a practice session, I do believe the faster cars, they're not going to take a chance if they're not completely sure that you've moved out of the way and you've seen them. They're going to back off slightly, and they're not going to go past you quite as quick. But in the race, they are just going to absolutely go for it. There is no time to be lost. So through Flugplatz, very fast double right-hander, very fun onto this fast section of the track. Other than the Dottinger, one of the fastest parts of the track, there's a nice big crest here. You have to keep it flat over this and then lift off a bit of a brake before you get to the crest of Schwedenkreuz. Very, very difficult corner, that one, to really maximise. So just doing our best to slowly, incrementally increase our speed. And this is something I've been doing over the couple of laps. Let's say to this point here, I estimate I've done about 50 laps as the Ferrari GT3 296 goes flying by just as we get to the foxhole. It's always really cool to see cars like that sharing the track. So of course the winners of the 2023 Nurburgring 24, Ricciardelli Racing, they were driving a Ferrari 296 just like that one. So interesting to see it fly past. Very, very quick car indeed. And you see just how fast they fly past. It is stratospheric, the difference. And that is one of the key factors, I think, in survival around such a race circuit, is just really judging the traffic effectively. So coming down the hill here towards Callenhard, this is a fun corner. It really digs in nicely here. You kind of apex late back on the power, and then you've got a very fast left-right coming up. It's going to shift up to 4th gear before we get there, just to settle the car down before we turn in. And then it's miss, hit, miss. On this occasion, it looks like I've kind of missed all 3 apexes, but just trying to carry the speed the best I can. And then into the slowest corner on the lap, at the bottom of the hill here. And this was a really good session for me in terms of following the Cayman and getting a good feel for that. But then, of course, trying to catch up with a car in the same class as me. So the car in front is another BMW 330i G20. Therefore, it's really interesting here to, for the very first time in my Nordschleife racing career, to come up against a car that is the same car as me. Because as I said, so far it's been a case of just much faster cars flying past me, or I'm going past much slower cars. So here we're kind of in an even battle, and so it was a really good experience just to go toe to toe with someone who had very similar power output, same size of car and handling roughly. So I definitely had the speed here. I'm not sure if this guy was just running a bit slower, not really pushing, but this sequence here, not really the best place to go for. He's covering the left hand side and I can't really do too much at this point here. So this long section up the hill, just looking for a move. It's not going to happen here. We've got some traffic flying by, so I kind of have to move over to the side and let them go. There's another car coming quite quickly, or is that, no, that is still the Cayman in the rearview mirror. So I'm being held up at this point. I think I was pulling away from the Cayman by a couple of seconds to this point in the lap. We're a good 5 or 6 minutes into the lap, and with the full GP, you're looking at a 10-minute lap time roughly. There goes the Aston Martin GT3 car. If you have any questions, of course, guys, please do ask in the comments down below. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Of course, if you're not subscribed, then please do get yourself subbed, because we've got some very interesting videos coming up around the Nürburgring. None better than the NLS 6 and 7, the 2 6-hour races that follow this practice session. But this guy actually just slows down on the exit of the carousel, so I'm released just before we get to this very fast part of the track. And one of my favourite parts of the track, this is Hohe Acht. This is the highest point of the circuit, pretty much here. And this part of the track is really about rhythm and carrying speed and not scrubbing off too much from the brakes. So just rolling the car in, keeping that speed up over the curb here on the right. Of course, the Bilstein suspension working to good effect. This corner gives you a lot of grip because it's uphill. You're really digging into that corner. This one, the opposite effect. You're kind of going downhill, so you don't slow down quite as quickly as you'd like. Over a little crest here into Brunchen 1. Back on the power, using a bit of the curve on the exit. Then onto the brakes. Turning in nice and early for Brunchen 2, because that corner really is quite misleading. And if you don't turn in early enough, you just never quite get to the apex. Ice curve again, turning in quite early, back on the power and running the curve on the exit. And this was something I was really learning in this car, just how early should I turn in, how early should I get on the power, how do you get the most rotation out of it, and how do you preserve your momentum the best way. These are all the things you're trying to work out, amongst, of course, how do we let past traffic and how do we be consistent and how do we defend against other cars. And you know, there's so many things to think about, and this was the exciting thing going into my first NLS race the following day. So once again, a yellow flag section on this part of the track, and then a code 60, having to drive at 60 kph, kind of self-explanatory. So after that sequence, we come up to Galgenkopf, and this is a crucial corner. This one leads out onto the Dottinger, and therefore the longest straight on the track. You have to get this one right. But there was I don't quite know what this was. There was a big group of cars in front. I didn't see any yellow flags, but no one seemed to want to overtake each other, so I kind of thought, you know what, I'm coming in this lap, so let's play it safe. So I'm just asking the team on the radio if they wanted me to come straight in or do the GP loop and then come in, because there are 2 pit lane entries here, given the length of the track. And I was opting to do the GP and then come in, so we still have a couple of minutes of driving here in this session. It's been a very good session for me, I think, getting used to the car and really getting used to a good amount of traffic. Now a lot of cars are going to peel into the pit lane there, that's the main entry that you can go to. And the reason why there were so many cars here for this session was, as I kind of touched upon at the start of the video, there was a red flag, as there was quite a nasty accident midway through the day. That got cleared up. And there wasn't much time left in the day, and so pretty much everyone was out on the track. And that kind of, to an extent, replicated racing conditions with lots of cars all mixed up, and therefore it was a really good time to get out on track. So through the GP section into turn 3 here, just turning in nice and early, kind of really brake towards the apex. Again, carrying as much speed as possible. We have an M4 GT3 in our mirror. We're just going to take the normal line and let it accelerate past on the exit. So sometimes you don't really want to overcomplicate moving out of the way for these cars. As long as you kind of just drive a very predictable line, they're going to be able to just power past you on the exit or on the entry. If you start trying to second guess each other, and you both second guess each other at the same time, that's when accidents can happen, and you know, that's what I'm really trying to avoid. One of my main approaches to this entire experience of driving for Bilstein in this car around this track with multiple races on the calendar was that I just really did not want to be involved in any incidents, and to this point that has held true. I've not had any incidents in the car, no damage, no collisions, and that was something I was really quite proud of and wanted to continue. Not easy around here, of course, a very difficult circuit to race on, very, very narrow on the Nordschleife section, but it's something that I really wanted to maintain. So I was always really conscious of just making sure I'm in the right position such that the faster traffic can get past me quite easily. So pretty much rounding out this practice session, it's been a really fun one. The fact that you're still here listening to me rambling on probably suggests that it might have been alright. So hopefully I can bring more of these to you. I mean, I am going to be doing NLS 8, and that is going to involve a Friday practice session, so I'll try and do the same again. As we come into the pit lane here, nice little chicane slalom to contend with on the way in, and then we have to make sure we are going 60 kilometers per hour or less by the time we get to this line here. There is a speed gun, and they will be checking. We're bringing the car in to conclude this session. I think it was a very successful one. I learnt quite a lot, got acclimatized to the car, practiced driving behind some other cars quite closely, and so as far as practice goes, it was a good session. I really hope you enjoyed it, guys. Subscribe for more, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.